All right. Thank you so much for joining us for the next session. We've already seen some pretty inspiring sessions, not only from the product team, but of course, Felix from Sega. That will go down as one of my favorite one-on-ones that I've had in a while. A very nostalgic brand. Of course, myself growing up with a Sega Master System and Genesis. Emerson would be really interested to see if you were also a Sega guy or a Nintendo guy. But I just such a great example of AI used in production cases, and who better to talk to than Emerson from our good friend from Microsoft that spends his day in with the clients as a practitioner and gets to in a way work with and talk with the companies that are on the bleeding edge of this technology. And I found it fascinating to kind of go through this content with Emerson before CluedInsight to kind of see how things are progressing. But I will leave it over to him. And so we are going to start off by Emerson taking us through a little bit of a worldview on where we're at with the data and AI from Microsoft's view. And then we're going to end the session with a little bit of a one-on-one, two practitioners just talking about topics that are on the tip of tongues of everyone. And in a way, we want to just break a little bit of that transparency open about what we're both experiencing from each side. So Emerson, over to you. I will mute myself. I will turn my video off. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Tim. Thanks for the opportunity. Hi, everyone. Good day to all. I'm happy to be here and also looking forward to this discussion with Tim. For today, I'm focusing on if there's one thing that I would like to land for this session is the importance of landing your data and AI foundation. I'm going to explain why. But before we do that, I would like to kind of start thinking about why are we doing this? Why AI is a big discussion right now, and AI has been there for decades. And for today, I'm going to focus on agentic AI as a solution. And the reason for that is this is what I'm seeing a lot of the traction with a lot of our clients, way back from a CEO, a CFO, a CIO, a CDO. All these discussions are happening at that level. But it is important to know what is this topic, what's the strategy behind this. There's business strategy on this, data strategy as well. But the important is for practitioner to understand why are we all doing this. So we will go from high level all the way to the lower level of implementation. So just to start, just to level set, I'm not going to drain all the slides altogether, but the goal here is to show that a lot of our clients are into AI. 80% of organizations are deploying AI. That's up from 5% from 2023. Thinking about the adoption of Gen AI, it's up from 55% to 75%. So we know, and this is what I'm seeing across the organizations, everyone's thinking about AI, right? And when we discuss AI, it's not about the low-hanging fruits. Everyone is talking about, I want transformational AI. We're done with pilots. We're done with some of these small use cases. We're here to kind of scale, right? So it is very important. Now, if you look at this slide as well, 99% of the organizations are having challenges. Challenges on how they actually scale, challenges on access to data, challenges on having quality data. So later on, Tim and I are going to discuss about what are these things that we can do from a process perspective, from people perspective, and from capability perspective, from technologies, both from Microsoft and CluedIn. I think that would be really beneficial to the audience here. Quick kind of like overview. If there's three questions that my clients ask me is, these three different parts of topics. One is how can I realize and measure business value? And that's why here I'm going to be very specific to some of the use cases to kind of give you an example. Next one is how can we implement and scale? There are challenges, and I'm going to cover some of that as well. So how do we kind of overcome these challenges and take actions? The goal here is to not wait for the full transformation of 5 to 10 years digital transformation. The goal is what we can do over the next few weeks, 6 months, let's deploy into production and do the iterations from there. Last but not the least is the organizational North Star, which I'm going to park. I'm not going to discuss this today, but to give you a high level, why is this one here? Yes, we're going to move forward. We're going to implement from development, QA, and production. We're going to make sure there's measured business value, but we want to do it very quickly. It's not something that we're going to plan for and develop, and then 3 years down the road we will see the outcome. This is outcome based in the next 3 to 6 months, but before we can do this, we need to make sure we know where we're going, and that's why the importance of data foundation is really critical for this plan. So I'm gonna directly go to the middle part, which is how do we realize and measure value, which is for the top part. And so before I go here, the best way to explain agentic AI is through use cases. But before I go to the use case, I'm going to talk about very high level. What does it mean? So agentic reasoning, any solution where you're actually able to use Gen AI or AI in general to actually break down this specific use case into tasks. This solution has memory, so you can go back to specific steps. It is intelligent in a way that you can actually automate a specific business process. A lot of our clients are focusing on this. As you can see, these are some of the stats based on what others are seeing, based on the surveys. From 5.1 billion of a market in 2024, it's 47.1 billion. And I know Tim is going to cover some of this, some of the AI agents and co-pilots implemented in some of the solutions that we provide to you. 33%, up from 1%. This is going to be tied. AI agents will be tied to software applications being deployed. Last but not the least, from 0% to 15%, day-to-day work decisions will be made autonomously using agents, right? And so let's get right into the use cases. To implement agents, it is important to understand the business value that it will bring, and what are some of the business functions that we need to actually automate. So from a simple solution to advance, or simple use cases to advance, we can start thinking about simple to be more on the retrieval side, right? Extract, for example, defect reports, root cause analysis, so on and so forth. Middle one could be extract invoice details from PDFs, matches against purchase orders. I have a client that had this conversation just 2 weeks ago. They said this is so much of a very tedious work. It takes a lot of people to do it. But how do we kind of automate it so that we can basically get some of these folks to be on the more kind of like meaningful work that they actually enjoy, right? And the next one would be advanced. So if you think about it, these different business functions you can automate. You can automate by using different agents. First one could be quality control agent. Next one could be around the invoice processing agent. And then for the much more complex, could be the supply agent. The goal here is to kind of moving forward, think about building your V team or virtual team to kind of combine some of the business folks with their skills with some of the folks who has technical skills, so that you can merge the two personas and then build this automated agents. Goal here is as well is to start simple. But a lot of our clients started here, and they are saying that we are done with some of the simple and some of the learning of building this. We want to scale, right? And so building this a scale, you need some of the steps moving forward and needing the foundation, which we will cover a bit later. In terms of measuring value, I think this is very important. This is a very common, if anything, this is the most important ask from a lot of our clients. How do I measure this value? So think about this agents to be kind of like specific function that when you actually implement this, you're going to reduce time to actually do the same work, to have more outcome out of the same work. For example, here, production efficiency, downtime reduction, operational cost. These are very tangible KPIs, right? So just want to give you these examples. I'm not going to drain this slide. The goal here is to kind of give you a bit of a perspective why we're building agents, why we're measuring value, and how we're actually progress and implement this at scale. Moving forward, as you actually build this agent, start thinking about automating the entire business process. Again, there's going to be people in the loop here, but the goal here is to how you can actually get a planner or an agent manager, if you will, that will basically orchestrate these different agents. So that's kind of like the autonomous implementation of this for specific business use cases or business domains that can take advantage of these agents being implemented. Next one would be, yes, now we understand that, hey, we can build all these different agents. The goal here is to start aligning these agents according to the different business domains. But the challenge here is, how do we kind of get the data to build these agents? If we want to implement agents or any application or any analytics at scale, we cannot just connect directly to these different sources. If we're building hundreds of these agents, connecting to the sources 100 times or multiple times is not the proper way to do it. And that's why we need to build the foundation and consolidate or unify some of this data with proper controls in governance and quality, which we're going to cover later. So that's kind of like, think about, how can I get this data into a layer where it can be used. A lot of the organizations, yes, they consolidate some of this data in the data lake. Great step moving forward. Some are still in the warehouses, some are in the operational stores. Yes, we recognize the fact that these are platforms that are in place, and the goal is not to rip and replace this, but the goal is, how can we move forward and actually solve some of these challenges. And so now we're getting into that data foundation that we would like to discuss now. If your data is siloed, whether they're directly from the sources or the data lakes or data warehouses and what have you, we need to kind of get them to a point where they are unified so that you can build these agents, make this data much more reusable, right? But before we can serve this data for, the different agents, for the different applications and analytics, we need proper data management. We need governance, which is part of this big data and AI foundation. The data foundation needs to unify that data. Next one will be the data management layer, when you can create a lot of this automation, getting the data from the sources into this ecosystem. Use code generation, for example, start cleaning that data, integrating that data, and then from there, kind of serve this data into these different domains, and then making sure that all of these layers are unified, are kind of like tied down by data governance, security, and compliance. So now we're getting into the very specifics of what does it mean to build a data foundation. The data foundation is not only about technology. Think about data foundation is a combination of people, processes, and technology. And if we are going to blow this one out as to what's the data and AI foundation, this is the Microsoft recommended data and AI foundation, where the data is underneath. A lot of this, recommended best practices on how you manage the data, on how you govern that data is all tied in here, plus all these different capabilities for AI. I'm not going to drill down on this yet, but would love to kind of get Tim back on video here and start discussing, because this is probably the most exciting part of how we can actually move forward and make it real for our clients, right? So I guess, Tim, for this, would love to hear from you as to, when it comes to data management, master data, data quality, what have you, what are the things that we as practitioners should focus on? Where should we start? Where do you see clients down into these very specific challenges on how we can basically accelerate in solving some of these problems?
Yeah, makes sense. And I'd later on love to ask you what your daily kind of use of AI is. Your
Mhm.
daily, are you activating agents on your side yet? I'd be super interested for that in a second, but more than happy to
Yes,
dive into this first. Look
yes.
on the screen, everyone, and Emerson included, and you can see there is a healthy amount of um, elements, categories on the screen that are very much a nice mix of things we do in IT and things that we do more on the people and the process and the business side. So, let's take something like CDC. It's a very technical thing. In a way, the business should not even be aware that this thing is
True.
happening. Data
100%.
movement at the speed of light is just you would argue an expectation that most people have today. If I need it now and I want it now, and good technology like that exists. I guess the best place to start is first to identify that elements like master data and data quality is really about bringing the business into what is inherently been a pretty technical landscape. Before we got onto this, we talked about, there were topics you talked about, like, we've got obviously the agents, understanding how they all talk to each other is quite a complex thing. You often have to be quite technical to understand how would I wire all these different pieces together. When it comes to practices like MDM and data quality, the two elements that I can see on the screen, I think it's first important to identify, back to your slide on what's the business value measurement here that
Yes.
we've got. A lot of that is about identifying that is we lead with those practices with, where's the value for the business? Is there a top line effect? Is there a bottom line effect? We find that more often than not, MDM and data quality is more of a bottom line kind of effect that comes in of we've got practices in preparing our data that are just handing Excel sheets around, or they're just inefficient, and
Hmm.
things like this. When it comes to when it comes to how that wires into, in your words, this kind of foundation that you're putting together, really it's about bridging that synergy between what we do in IT and the business. I mean, we can't forget that often the most critical data that we have within our business is actually generated in the kind of lines of business like sales and marketing and
Yeah.
customer support and HR. And this data is important for a couple of reasons. Number one is that it fuels a lot of the automation that we have in our
Hmm.
businesses that pay us on time and that send invoices and collect cash and schedule up reviews with one-on-ones with our employees and all of these important things that you do to operate a business. And you can then just imagine, even in some cases, a little slip up in some of that data can sometimes cause either small little things like maybe an upset customer, all the way up to being fined, or
Sure.
a breakdown in
Yeah.
operations that costs people a lot to fix. And so I think the first answer to that would just, as I echoed before, it's really about identifying that this is about bringing the business into the supply chain of data that historically has been something that we do kind of bury more in IT.
Right. Right. I love it. And I think one of the things that I'm seeing now, different executives are actually reinforcing the importance of we have to do this, otherwise we're part of that 99% who is not able to scale, right? Think about the quality of data that we put to this, that we feed to these agents, right? I have a client, for example, who talked about I have thousands, tens of thousands of genomic data,
Yeah.
but how we can feed this into Gen AI and say, hey, I'm going to interrogate this data, but how do we ensure that the quality of that data is the way we expect it to be, and that
Mm,
we're going to generate value out of this documents, right?
mm,
Where do you see that, the solutions, for example, that you have include in
mm,
on doing this? Of course, data quality is the end goal. That's what the business sees, is this data is quality data. But there's so many things that needs to be done to get to a quality data, right? So it's
mm.
not just a one step, multiple step. Where do you see um, organizations, Tim, tackling this? Where's the first step, and where can CluedInsight help them?
I think it's an aspiration of most companies that I talk to as well, of this rather utopian idea of, I would just love to throw these agents and AI just at our historical data. I'm a 150-year-old bank and I've got
Yeah.
just legacy systems and all of this. And oh, wouldn't it be amazing just to let them go? And
Yeah.
actually, in reality, the opposite happens in that the almost the speed that these agents are coming in and will come in, they will exacerbate and surface the complexity of not having a good foundation of data much faster than, I guess, traditional techniques have done before. So, I mean, the first thing would be that I'm hearing that aspiration as well, Emerson, of,
Yeah.
I've got all of these systems, and the truth is, everybody is somewhat aware, and maybe it's slightly assuming that there's some absolute gold in there to lower operational costs or to make a better experience for customers.
Right.
And if only we could activate this on top. I think a good test for everyone would be to just take a single important business domain, like a customer at your business. Let's just, for example's sake, say that you can get that single list of customers. I would argue a lot of companies really struggle at even getting a
Sure.
single view, hence why solutions like MDM and CluedIn exist, is that it would be just an amazing experience to kind of an experiment to kind of run an agent just over one single asset to see, I guess, the underlying complexities that are raised by not having levels of traceability and lineage of where the data came from and where is it going. Somewhat a lineup of individuals that if there is a breakdown in the data, you can call on them like you would if a service went down.
Right. Right.
And that's really where that people and process things become so important, is that agents and AI don't dissipate the need for those kind of core critical pieces. If anything, I think in the speed of taking on AI and agents, it will somewhat fast track very transparently, through examples in breakdown in not having that good foundation of data. And I think, the interesting part is just like AI has come so far, it turns out other categories have come so far as well. I often use the example, and you'll know this well, of look at what's happened in the data warehousing space. We've gone through this evolution where, we used to get SQL Server, and we would define schemas and structures up front, and then we would build these enterprise data models that would serve all use cases across the business. And then some new thought came in, some modernization came in, and we realized and took all the parts that made that complex, and we said, okay, well, if we could design a new solution now, we would focus on agility, we would focus on flexibility. The cloud brought us scale, so good
Right.
timing with that.
Yep.
And guess what? Master data management, data quality has gone through the same kind of evolution, where solving a problem like you've got so many different data sources, and trust me, Emerson, this is a discussion that I have all the time as well, is I've got 4,000 applications. I need to connect all of that. Now, of course, One Lake and Fabric is a great way to solve part of that chain, i.e., well, let's first of all get all of your data into one place. And that's where things like CDC become scalable and important, because the idea of having to manage 4,000 pipelines of ETL sounds just like a horrible idea. And once you're in that place, you haven't solved your world, but you've solved a very little thin sliver of your world, which is, at least I'm connecting to the same place to get my data, right? And very similar to what the Lakehouse approach brought, where you kind of pick files and mature them through different zones. Guess what? A modern MDM solution like CluedIn takes the same approach. And one of the beautiful things that it cracks is it says, actually, given time and effort, you can actually connect those 1,000 systems. And the reason is actually simple. You're not trying to model your data up front into one global enterprise data model or one view of your customer.
Yeah.
Rather, you're saying there actually might end up being 16 different versions of what a customer looks like, and they all look a little bit different. But that's because the data could never look the same in the first place. And instead of trying to go on that mission of bending and just cramming a square peg into a round hole, the Lakehouse has done exactly what CluedIn did with the MDM and data quality space. It says, let's not do that. Rather, and I'm going to provide you that flexibility and that agility to say, hey, listen, if someone downstream needs a customer looking slightly different, that's okay. That's normal within a business. Having it all fit into one model, I think, is one way that CluedIn has really cracked the MDM space, and how Microsoft customers have already kind of leveraged the value from it.
100%. And that's the reality, right, Tim? There is no
Mm,
one version of customer because there's different business units, there's different, how to call this, granularity that is needed for specific customers, what have you. I agree. So how do you explain how Cluedin is different
mm,
compared to other capabilities, for example, making these adjustments and
mm,
and yet making sure master data is implemented properly, that
mm.
quality is also implemented, even though there's a few different kind of like, I don't know if the versioning is the right term for that, but say, right, how can we think about master data management in those kind of scenarios?
If I'm talking to a more technical crowd, I would usually say Cluedin's approach to MDM is like the lake house of the data warehouse world. It's exactly
Nice.
like that. And I think that really separates the solutions that are also out there where they are usually taking that approach of let's build a customer up front. And then we go out to the business and we interview and we say, well, what elements do you need? And what elements do you need? And that's good. That's good that we do that. And I don't think we should do away with that in implementing Clued In. But often what it leads to, and Emerson, I know you would have experienced this in your, as being a practitioner yourself in your career, you get to this point where there's conflicts. And
Yes.
sometimes these conflicts, someone has to win and someone has to lose. And in that, that's often where you often lose a lot of the momentum and the audience. And one of the other things that comes from that approach is that because you know when you're building your model of a customer, you somehow are trying to please as many people as possible. Often it's harder, it makes it harder to actually bring on new data sets because you kind of remember that pain of how did I fit everything into the same view? Pull the dust off that old ETL pipeline you haven't looked at in 6 months and have to remember how does it all fit together? Cluedin takes a very much approach of you will have a semantic view of your data, and those semantics will be traded. So when I'm talking to someone who's non-technical, I often describe it as it's like putting a Rosetta Stone over your data, where it's just an entire translation layer. It's just and as you translate, it could be as simple as first name and F name. And that's a simple semantic link. But then it gets more complex, like, oh, I've got a full name, and then I've got first name, middle name, and last name. And suddenly you realize in that semantic translation, there's a little bit of extra work in there of
Yes.
allocating into the different buckets. And then you've got the other kind of concept and reality. And I love that. It's funny, like, uh, that is a powerful, for me, that's a powerful sentence you said before of like, but that's the reality.
It
And
is.
that's what I think makes MDM such an interesting category to work in, is because it's really where the rubber hits the road. And often you're bringing in master data management to solve the 20% you've never been able to crack.
Yes.
You've never been able to codify. You've never been able to script your way out of. It's like, no, I actually need to involve some human eyes and process into making a decision off data, not only for the auditability, but because guess what? The expert on that data doesn't sit in IT. They don't know how to code. They don't know how to
Yes.
write Python. They're not in
Yes.
Fabric. They're not in Power BI. They sit out in the warehouse and they do stock counting, and they know we don't even sell that product. Why is that there? It looks like a good product. The
Sure.
quality's there.
Sure. Yeah.
We don't even sell that product. So um, uh, I would say that what makes Clued very much different is, and one of the ethos we have at Clued with building products as well is there's something that's so much better than making a product easy to use, and that is skipping the part you had to do in the first place. And so what I love about Clued approach to MDM and why our customers and at Microsoft joint customers are also loving it, and you heard this from some of the speakers before, is that that whole painful upfront modeling approach of trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It's
Yeah.
not easier. You skip it. You skip it. Very much like we did with the lake house approach, right? We will pull out a fresh notebook, we'll identify our data sources, and we'll serve up the use case. And then we'll put that into production, and then that's automated. And then the next day, there's a new request that is different enough that you can't use the same flow. Open a brand new canvas, notebook, bring on the data sets, blah, blah, blah. And you're getting almost that agility and flexibility. That's
Right.
CluedIn's differentiation in the MDM space. It provides that almost lowering of cognitive load, because there's a lot of cognitive load involved typically with trying to figure out by drawing all the boxes on the whiteboard and figuring out how am I going to squeeze that into that. They don't have the same IDs. Some are missing IDs.
Right.
That table doesn't even have IDs. But somehow you've got to form a single view. CluedIn cracks that part.
I'm excited about that. I think I don't think we're showing some demos, but maybe we can attach some demos of this capabilities team to show this. How does it look like in real kind of like implementation, right? But
Yeah.
one thing I would like to add to what you said, right? These are processes that can be automated or can be skipped, what have you. But important here, I want to attach the people aspect, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first step to successful quality of data, for example, or governance is people, information owners, right? To your point, and I just want to reinforce that. It is important to have the business folks who know about the data to basically own this quality of data and making sure as we go through these processes of kind of like cleaning them, making sure there's a master copy of this data, what have you, that these owners, business owners of this data, if you will basically say, yes, this is the quality data. And they can basically have discussions with other data owners on how this specific data is going to be used by other domains or business units, what have you. And this is how we can scale all of these things, right? So you have the capability aligned with people, and I think you're starting with something that is more impactful moving forward. How do we make it real for our clients, for example?
Isn't it funny, Anderson, that in a world of AI kind of showing tremendous value
Yeah,
in master data and data quality, humans take the spotlight still,
sure,
which
sure.
is
Yes,
great for
yes,
a
yeah,
couple of key reasons. Number one, responsibility.
yes,
That is a key thing.
correct.
Just the
Yes,
fact that Jeff and Sarah in the sales department, not as sales individuals, but
yes,
they are somewhat stewards of data, responsible for data in that line of business. Just the fact that they have a pipe of data that they get to see
yeah.
and cast their stamp of approval over before it proliferates throughout a business. We underestimate how important that is. And guess what? AI is not going to do that for us today.
No,
So
no,
in this
yes.
land, humans rule.
100%. You brought up a really, really important kind of like misconception about AI.
Hmm.
AI is not going to fix your data on your own. You need
Hmm.
people, you need your expertise from your people. You need to kind of make sure you guide through the use of AI to do data cleansing, to do data interrogation, to do a lot of this different co-pilots. It is not leave it to AI and it will fix itself. No, it is not. 100%. Yes.
So with the last few minutes here, we've got Emerson. I want to ask that question. How are you utilizing AI today? Like we've all got good examples. Here at
Yes.
CluedIn, we have specific, Teams channels where
Yes.
the name of it is I used AI for that. It's just a place where we can just put all of our examples of like, wow, you should all be doing this. Look at this. Can you have some examples of
Oh,
share
I
some
have
examples?
I'll give an example. I think
Yeah.
the one that I'm so obsessed right now
Mm,
is the researcher copilot.
mm, mm,
I'm not sure if it's open for everyone, if you've tried it, but you
mm,
can build some sort of a use case. I'll give an example. I used it for kind of like a research for a specific industry. What
mm,
are they doing right now with AI? And most of them they are predictive, what have you. And then I ask it how you can actually use Gen AI to actually further enhance these capabilities that you have now with Gen AI. How do you measure value and what are the actual
mm,
ROI? So in
mm,
dollars and percents, what have you. It's like a 30-page research made for me and kind of like it brought me to a level where what it would take me years to actually do it.
yeah.
Specific industries, because in my work Yes, I'm a practitioner of data, but now when it comes to AI, you have to be very, very aware of how you apply it in business.
Yeah.
So it's not just technical anymore. You got to have apply it in business. So researchers is number one. Number two is code generation. This is probably something that I just tried just over this weekend.
Yeah.
So I have this code that I use for managing my portfolio, for example, right? And I use my own investment kind of like portal, and there's so many accounts in there that I have to actually build some sort of a program to actually make sure I'm aligning all my portfolio according to what I want to do in the next week, for example. So I have this program, and it's basically built 6 years ago. And so I use Copilot to say, make this efficient rather than me copy and pasting and doing and I use a very simple program for it. It was able to make it efficient without me being talking about syntax, what have you. It build the code, copy the code, move it over. It actually works. I just only had to make an adjustment and say, I don't want you to be doing this. So kind of like gave me another iteration of the code. I was able to use it. This one basically tells me that, man, it's so good to have this because I'm not a heavy developer guy, but it made my code so efficient.
As
That's
soon as I tried the same thing, Emerson,
yeah,
I remember sending a message to our entire team just saying, it will not be long before everyone has developer capabilities. And it is
sure.
here's where I think we're right now. And I had this same experience is I copied the code in, and then there was a compile error.
Yeah,
And I thought, oh, maybe they've written it for .NET 9. I'm not on .NET 9. I had .NET 8 installed, and maybe
yeah,
that was just
yeah,
me, and I should have been more specific. And I bet you it would have worked.
yeah,
But there was another example where I was building something to parse an online website, and after telling it so many times, I just thought, no, I actually now have to really specifically tell it how to parse that HTML.
yeah,
Uh, and these are on the good models. So it's kind of like we've got glimmers of it just being absolutely breathtaking. But I actually think if like this is something I know echoed by Satya and Microsoft at Microsoft Build as well, that you know, um, just that it empowers at some point, it will empower everyone that can't code to be able to do the things that require you to code to do is
yes,
just breathtaking. So I,
100%,
I think
100%.
I think with that, thank you so much, Emerson, for joining us. We're busy people. We've got to jump onto the next session, but always a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for the opportunity, Tim, and looking forward to more discussions and learning from you and share some of these learnings to your audience.
Sounds good.